Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to neighborhoodnewsstudio.com. We have a great lineup today, May 17th. Kicking it off will be Mr. John O'Loughlin with McDuff Lives. And then we have George Webb at noon. George has a slight injury, so he might not make it the whole show. But anyway, we have coming up at 2 o'clock, Who's a Tonic Live with Mark Kulak. And then we have Chris the IP Hunter at 4 o'clock Eastern. And topping it off will be the Duke Report with Peter Duke at 5 Eastern. Good morning, John.
Hi, John. How are you?
It's a beautiful day here in Temperance, Michigan. How are you doing down there?
It's perfect. It's a great day, and I'm looking forward to go outside and maybe do a little gardening this afternoon.
Okay, so you're going to have another reading from Bill Cooper's Beyond the Pale Horse.
That's right.
All right, take it away, John.
All
Let
right.
the initial.
Thank you. And hello, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin, and I'm very glad to have you with me. Hello to everyone in the chat room and everybody who's watching without being in the chat room. It's certainly not required, and glad to have everyone here. We're investigating a portion of the amazing book by William Cooper. Bill Cooper, his first name is actually Milton William Cooper, but this is the most recent printing, I believe, 1991 edition. No, it was published in 91, and this is a later edition. Let's see. Yeah. And the only difference is that supposedly this one they had deleted one of the chapters because it had to do with the Protocols of Zion, which, of course, everyone knows is a hoax, right? If you don't know that it's a hoax, then you probably haven't met Alan Dulles yet. So he will explain to you how it's these are not the droids you're looking for. It's a hoax. Don't look there. So we have to take that chapter out of the reprints because we don't want you to get confused with the hoax. You understand I'm being sarcastic, I hope. Yeah, I'm trying. Once again, if you haven't got a Screaming Ospreys mug, you can get one at screamingospreys.com. And speaking of Screaming Ospreys, I got to do a pitch for my show tonight because I'm really, really happy, excited about 8 p.m. We're going to have a show with a group of women that I know from the first and second charrettes, the charrettes down here on Mystery Island, dedicated to my dad, McDuff. And these three women are Amber Connor, who has been my guest once a month for 6 or 8 months now, and but also Carol M. and Tara Starr. And these three women are going to be my guests. They have a show here at Neighborhood News Studio in the afternoons. You can check the website for the next one. But they call their group Protecting the Nest. And that's what the Ospreys do. That's the whole point, how we got started with our Osprey movement. The Screaming Ospreys grew out of the first charrette on July 20th of 2019. And my wife, drummer, caught a picture of an osprey protecting her nest, and she was screaming at us as we got too close in the little water taxi we were in. And that image is what has driven my work, the idea that we are the ospreys. We have to protect the nest. And so tonight we will have three great nest protectors with us at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on McDuff Lives 3. So just please join us if you can. Sorry, I'm a little thirsty this morning. Excuse me. Now, as far as the William Cooper book, let's remind everybody that I am not here to advocate for William Cooper as a credible or not credible person. Personally, I do believe that he's highly credible and that the attacks launched against him have been uh, based on um, a twisted uh, reading of what he says. For instance, they're often referencing him as being into UFOs and extraterrestrials. But the fact is that while he investigated it thoroughly, he never believed that they were actually from, outer space. He will tell you, he told us in no uncertain terms that these things that we observe are real, but they are not extraterrestrial. This is a hidden program using tools, energy, mechanical means, masers, I guess, or lasers now, in pursuing an economic strategy of world domination. And that's what we need to look at is the content of what he's saying, because he seems to have had some amazing inner access. He couldn't have put all this together without it. Now, I want to focus again. This is my second part. And by the way, I was told my first part was hard to watch on my YouTube channels. It was apparently running into a lot of hiccups where it would just stop and then you'd get the spinning ball. I don't understand why that happens. Some people say they got their comments were deleted. I didn't do that. Okay. And if YouTube is putting a throttle on me, the only thing we can do is complain to them. And I did. I wrote them a note, but I would like for folks to support me in this. From the YouTube yesterday, if you find that it's glitchy, send a note into YouTube. There is a button you can find where it says, send feedback. Get after them. And oh, I'm sorry, that's just a little distraction there. I want to introduce the idea of a flywheel, and I think John might have a flywheel image queued up for me. Is that right, John? There you go. Now, what you see there is called a flywheel, and you see there the wheel itself, and the wheel itself is a way to conserve energy. Can you get one that shows the whole machine, like not a lawn tractor, but one of those great big farm tractors from 1898, or a steam engine that has a flywheel on it? Because that would be more illustrative for me. But the idea is converting piston energy. You think of a piston going up and down, right? Up and down, because that's the way the piston engine works. But that up and down motion is not efficient. Okay, all right. So, yeah, the up and down motion of the engine inside of that John Deere engine, it's probably a two-stroke, right? That's what they were, is going up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay. Now, to convert that to the wheel, that up and down energy goes through a couple of changes. And by the time it gets to the actual drive mechanism of the tractor, the up and down movement is gone. And it's now a smooth movement forward. Okay. In addition, because of the way that flywheels work, that up and down energy can actually be stored in the wheel mechanism of the flywheel, so that even after the pistons stop moving, the flywheel keeps going and the momentum of the tractor keeps going forward. Okay? So what I'm trying to describe for you here is something mechanical, but it's important to have that image in your mind as we get into the text here, because this is the way William Cooper explains it. This is the way it's explained in, actually not by Cooper, but by the author of Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, which he quotes, and he quotes most of that book, as far as I understand. Well, this image is what we're talking about in Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Let's go back to the text where we left off, and let me share this for you so you can see what I am talking about. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and voila. Okay, and let's make that bigger so you guys can see it. Ooh, I just disappeared. Huh. There, I like that one. There's a different options for sharing the two screens that you can choose from, so I like this one. Okay, where did we leave off? We left off at the summary. It's only a matter of time before the new breed of private programmer slash economists will catch on to the far-reaching implications of the work begun at Harvard in 1948. The speed with which they can communicate their warning to the public will largely depend upon how effective we have been at controlling the media, subverting education, and keeping the public distracted with matters of no real importance. So this book, this pamphlet, or whatever it is, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, is written from the point of view of like the Bilderbergers. Like we're giving you this secret document, and we're instructing you that don't let anybody find out about it. This is a secret document, but this is the plan, and at some point it's going to leak out. But how long we've got before it leaks out depends upon how effective we are at controlling the media, subverting education, and keeping the public distracted with matters of no real importance. Okay? Like Will Smith. How important is that? And what's his name? With the lawsuit going on, Johnny Depp, right? I mean, that's all of this stuff. Great examples of distractions. So, to review, what we've learned so far from our reading is that Mr. Nathan Rothschild, the one that rigged the Battle of Waterloo and the financial system that England allowed him to take over as a result, understood that you could run economies with a flywheel type of mechanism that is built into it. And what that does is conceal from the public the fact that it is us, the people, that are the pistons of this engine. And as we get beaten up and down, by the vicissitudes of our very, very cramped and difficult lifestyles that we're forced into by their economy, we get killed, we get sick, we die, we have children, and they grow up, and then those children get used in the same machinery, the pistons, the human pistons going up and down, beating our heads together, and ultimately wearing ourselves out. You know that is their model. And they are, with the banking system, they are running the flywheel. And the way that this flywheel works is that ups and downs in the human part of it are inefficient. You want to transmit that up and down inefficiency, the zigzag effect, into a smooth, higher, more energetically efficient curve or a circle or a spiral, something that has momentum that's going to keep on going even after, or if, if the pistons all fail, there's still that flywheel. Keep going. Get some new pistons in there. Keep the flywheel going. As long as we understand that this flywheel is what they use, this flywheel effect is what they use, then we can see clearly that we're being abused. Our lives, our potential, our energy is all being smashed up and crunched and put to their use so that their motor keeps running in a smooth way without any interference. And so they teach us to love their engine, to feel that that is their engine is like our manna, it's our livelihood, it's how we put bread on the table, is by respecting and worshiping the system. The system is contrived by people like Nathan Meyer Rothschild, so that the flow of capital keeps going in their direction, no matter what happens to the humans. It's the currency system, the currency that goes around, back through and back up around and keeps that wheel going. And so they've learned how to do the shock effect. The shock effect was engineered in learning how to fire cannons from airplanes by putting the airplane on the ground and firing the cannon from the airplane, and with hooked up to sensors that can identify the frequencies at which this jolt to the airplane might cause the airplane to disintegrate. And we talked about how the bridges, could be caused to fall if a certain rhythm was beaten upon it by marching soldiers, for instance. So this idea of resonant frequencies that can cause the engine to crash, well, they look for them by raising a price or making something scarce or baby food. Hello. Let's see how the population reacts to scarcity of baby food. Okay. Running the stress test. Stress test on banks, right? No, it's a stress test on you. You're being stressed out. You are being subjected to an economic system geared to make you exhausted, anxious, fearful, obedient, and expendable. All right, I'm going to read some now. The economic model. Economics as a social energy science has as a first objective the description of the complex way in which any given unit of resources is used to satisfy some economic want. Parentheses, Leontief matrix, close parentheses. Now, Leontief is the name of the guy that got the 1948 Harvard grant that created the Harvard economic study process the name which escapes me. Here it is. The Harvard Economic Research Project. The first objective, when it is extended to get the most product from the least or limited resources, comprises that objective of general military and industrial logistics known as operations research. Okay, one of those operations research kind of words that makes you sleepy, right? Operations research. Well, it's a dull name for an important concept. The Harvard Economic Research Project, see how it, economic operations research, economic research, was an extension of World War II operations research. Its purpose was to discover the science of controlling an economy. At first, the American economy, and then the world economy. It was felt that with sufficient mathematical foundation and data, it would be nearly as easy to predict and control the trend of an economy as to predict and control the trajectory of a projectile. Well, Werner von Braun. Such has proven to be the case. Moreover, the economy has been transformed into a guided missile on target. The immediate aim of the Harvard project was to discover the economic structure, what forces change that structure, how the behavior of the structure can be predicted, and how it can be manipulated. What was needed was a well-organized knowledge of the mathematical structures and interrelationships of investment, production, distribution, and consumption. To make a short story of it all, it was discovered that an economy obeyed the same laws as electricity, and that all of the mathematical theory and practical and computer know-how developed for the electronic field could be directly applied in the study of economics. This discovery was not openly declared, and its more subtle implications were and are kept a closely guarded secret. For example, that in an economic model, human life is measured in dollars, and that the electric spark generated when opening a switch connected to an active inductor is mathematically analogous to the initiation of war. The greatest hurdle which theoretical economists faced was the accurate description of the household as an industry. This is a challenge because consumer purchases are a matter of choice, which in turn is influenced by income, price, and other economic factors. This hurdle was cleared in an indirect and statistically approximate way by an application of shock testing to determine the current characteristics, called current technical coefficients, of a household industry. Finally, because problems in theoretical economics can be translated very easily into problems of theoretical I think they must have meant economics, and the solution translated back again, it follows that only a book of language translation and concept definition needed to be written for economics. The remainder could be gotten from standard works on mathematics and electronics. This makes the publication of books on advanced economics unnecessary and greatly simplifies project security. All right. What he's saying there is sustainable development. You see that? The flywheel effect creates a perfect, sustainable engine that will always keep going. As long as you've got material to build the new pistons when the old pistons run out, or maybe if you start making better pistons, by redesigning the piston process. Maybe we could make pistons that never complain, that know that, their purpose in life is to drive that piston machine, and that only thing that makes them happy is working their ass off to do that. Maybe we can make people like that, Or, if they don't want to, we could just, connect them all to the singularity And while they're watching their pornography or their travel videos or whatever they're looking at, we'll just be sucking all the energy out of them, through extrinsic means. And, that way we'll get all their energy without them knowing it. You know, there's so many diabolical things that are going on in the world right now. It's not hard to conceive that their source is this kind of thinking. This is my opinion. But I think, why haven't people been talking about this Harvard economic research project and exposing all of this stuff? Well, it's kind of hard to imagine that economics works like a flywheel on a John Deere two-stroke. But hopefully you can see what I'm saying, that it's their theory. And to the extent that, it's in effect right now, I have to say it's working pretty good. All right, industrial diagrams, no way, I'm not doing this. But you can see the idea that if you really wanted to study this stuff, you could take these electronic diagrams and substitute the word, instead of inductor number one, you could put I don't know, an oil company or something, and then see where that connects to. Which way does the energy flow? The three industrial classes, we talked about that yesterday. The class one is capital, and that's resources. Class two, goods. I'm sorry, goods, and then class three is services. Class one, capital, parentheses, resources. That means if you have the resources, then that's all this potential energy that you have. It's your stored up energy. Class two, the goods. This is what dissipates your energy. You send your goods out into the nation for people to consume them. And number three, the services, action of population. I guess that's the people saying, I want this or I want that. Not quite clear what he means yet. Class number one exists at three levels: nature, government, and banking. Class two industries exist as producers of tangible or consumer products, in which he puts parentheses, dissipated products. This sort of activity is usually recognized and labeled by the public as industry. Class three industries are those which have service rather than a tangible product as their output. These industries are called households, and governments. Oh, well, I'm still not getting what he's saying. Their output is human activity of a mechanical sort, and their basis is population. The whole economic system can be represented by a three-industry model if one allows the names of the outputs to be capital, goods, and services. The problem with this representation is that it would not show the influence, say, the textile industry on the ferrous metal industry, the iron or steel industry. This is because both the textile industry and the ferrous metal industry would be contained within a single classification called the goods industry, and by this process of combining or aggregating these two industries under one system block, they would lose their economic individuality. Now, I'm going to skip all of this because all of these terms are just going to go in one ear and out the other, and I don't think it's that important. What is important is the idea that this flywheel is run by them understanding how these three forms of energy interact and how they can make them change or modulate in order to achieve their goals silently, quietly, without anybody seeing it happen. This part I think is worth taking in. Time flow relationships and self-destructive oscillations. Have you ever been accused of self-destructive behavior? An ideal industry may be symbolized electronically in various ways. The simplest way is to represent a demand by a voltage and a supply by a current. When this is done, the relationship between the two becomes what is called an admittance, which can result from three economic factors: one, foresight flow; two, present flow; and three, hindsight flow. Foresight flow is the result of that property of living entities to cause energy, food, to be stored for a period of low energy, for instance, a winter season. It consists of demands made upon an economic system for that period of low energy. In a production industry, it takes several forms, one of which is known as production stock or inventory. In electronic symbology, this specific industry demand is represented by capacitance. Two, present flow ideally involves no delays. It is, so to speak, input today for output today, a hand-to-mouth flow. And three, hindsight flow is known as a habit or inertia. In electronics, this phenomenon is the characteristic of an inductor. An economic analog is a pure service industry in which a current flow creates a magnetic field, which, if the current begins to diminish, collapse to maintain the current, the flow of money, the energy. All right. This part I want to concentrate on because, again, it's a little bit hard for me to understand it. But I think this is again, just to get to the meat of the nut, I'm going to try and explain this as I see it. Hindsight flow. A habit or inertia. A inductor or a pure service industry. What would be a pure service industry? Say, I don't know, legal services, in which a current flow, economic analog, is a flow of money. That is, I guess if you pay the lawyer, right, it creates a magnetic field. And he says the economic analog is the active human population. I guess that means, because you've paid in some money, that this activity happens, humans do things. And he says that's like how a magnetic field is created around a wire, for instance, which, if the current begins to diminish, that means, I forgot to put enough money in, or I didn't pay my bill, or, my retainer ran out, collapse to maintain the current. That means that I'm fired. I'm no longer a client because they need a new client that has money to keep the current going. Okay? So I'm out. Now, if a population, a nation, or a group within a nation, okay, is not paying its bills, then that population, that magnetic field around the wire, is going to collapse. And next to the word collapse, they write the word war to maintain the current flow. That means we got to reduce the population. And how's that happen? Through war. Well, how else? How about through the four horsemen of the apocalypse? Now, let me read this text. Fascinating comment on social welfare systems, okay? The social welfare program is nothing more than an open-ended credit balance system which creates a false capital industry to give non-productive people a roof over their heads and food in their stomachs. This can be useful, however, because the recipients become state property in return for the quote gift, unquote, a standing army for the elite. For he who pays the piper picks the tune. Okay. This is what's going on in our borders. Okay. We're creating a false capital industry. It's false because it's no new money. To give non-productive people a roof over their heads and food in their stomach. Okay? Immigrants, unskilled immigrants, or people, with skills that are not economically viable in this country. People who are useless eaters. Henry Kissinger's phrase, useless eaters. That's exactly what they are, according to their theory. And that's how they're not really useless eaters. Each one of them is a beautiful human being in their own right. That's the theory. This is what Bilderberg is saying in this instruction manual to its secret members, to say, this is how we screw them. We bring in some useless eaters who then become our property in return for the gift. That means virtually they are a standing army for the elite, at least at the poll, at the poll booth. But in terms of an actual confrontation, what side are they on? They're going to be on the side that feeds them. For he who pays the piper picks the tune. Those who get hooked on the economic drug must go to the elite for a fix. Isn't that happening big time right now? In this, the method of introducing large amounts of stabilizing capacitance is by borrowing on the future credit of the world. He wrote this in 1979, guys. Okay? Does he not foresee what we're going into right now? This is a fourth law of motion, onset, and consists of performing an action and leaving the system before the reflected reaction returns to the point of action, a delayed reaction. The means of surviving the reaction is by changing the system before the reaction can return. By this means, politicians become more popular in their own time, and the public pays later. In fact, the measure of such a politician is the delay time. The same thing is achieved by a government by printing money beyond the limit of the gross national product, an economic process called inflation. This puts a large quantity of money into the hands of the public and maintains a balance against their greed, creates a false self-confidence in them, and, for a while, stays the wolf from the door. They must eventually resort to war to balance the account. Isn't that exactly what we're doing right now? Because war ultimately is merely the act of destroying the creditor, and the politicians are the publicly hired hitmen that justify the act to keep the responsibility and blood off the public conscience. Okay, we're the creditors. We're the ones that have given everything and we are owed it back. The intervention, our action is let's pay taxes. Our expectation is those taxes come back to us in the form of services. They blow up the system, and the way they start over is by crushing us. and then they start over with whatever's left over. Ordo ab chaos. Pardon me. Now here's a kind of looking at it from a moral point of view, or a moral point of view, if you will. They must eventually resort to war to balance the account. If people really cared about their fellow man, they would control their appetites, parentheses, greed, procreation, etc., so that they would not have to operate on a credit or welfare social system which steals from the worker to satisfy the bum. Well, I can't go with bum. I think what has happened is that they've induced a lot of people into the welfare state, and I don't think it's fair to call them bums. They're human beings that have gotten trapped into a system that is really not in anybody's best interest. That's what well, that's what the Bilderbergers are saying, is they're saying, look what we're doing. We are putting these people in impossible situations where they're going to have to die. Since most of the general public will not exercise restraint, that is, we're not going to stop, buying things. We're not going to stop, procreating. We're not going to stop being greedy. There are only two alternatives to reduce the economic inductance of the system. One, let the population bludgeon each other to death in war, which will only result in a total destruction of the living earth. Two, take control of the world by use of economic silent weapons in the form of quiet warfare, and reduce the economic inductance of the world to a safe level by a process of benevolent slavery and genocide. The latter option has been taken as the obviously better option. At this point, it should be crystal clear to the reader why absolute secrecy about the silent weapons is necessary. The general public refuses to improve on its own mentality and its faith in its fellow man. It has become a herd of proliferating barbarians and, so to speak, a blight upon the face of the earth. That's you. You're a blight upon the face of the earth. You know that? Well, thank God we've got the Bilderbergers to tell us, because we would have never known that we were a blight upon the face of the earth if it hadn't been for the Bilderbergers. Yeah, but it's a secret. Don't tell anybody. We're really just good consumers. We do what we want to. It's, I just wake up, watch television, learn what I need to buy, go buy it. It's fun. A blight on the earth. They do not care enough about economic science to learn why they have not been able to avoid war despite religious morality and their religious or self-gratifying refusal to deal with earthly problems renders the solution of the earthly problem unreachable to them. It is left to those few who are truly willing to think and survive as the fittest to survive, to solve the problem for themselves as the few who really care. Otherwise, exposure of the silent weapon would destroy our only hope of preserving the seed of the future true humanity. Unquote. And there's all your diagrams, your mathematical symbols. Economic shock testing. In recent times, the application of operations research to the study of the public economy has been obvious for anyone who understands the principles of shock testing. In the shock testing of an aircraft frame, the recoil impulse of firing a gun mounted on that airframe causes shock waves in the structure, which tell aviation engineers the conditions under which some parts of the airplane or the whole airplane or its wings will start to vibrate or flutter like a guitar string, a flute reed, or a tuning fork, and disintegrate or fall apart in flight. Economic engineers achieve the same result in studying the behavior of the economy and the consumer public by carefully selecting a staple commodity such as beef, coffee, gasoline, or sugar, and then causing a sudden change or shock in its price or availability, thus kicking everybody's budget and buying habits out of shape. Then they observe the shock waves, which result by monitoring the changes in advertising, prices, and sales of that and other commodities. The object of such studies is to acquire the know-how to set the public economy into a predictable state of motion or change, a flywheel, a predictable state of motion. Even a controlled self-destructive state of motion, which will convince the public that certain expert people should take control of the money system and reestablish security rather than liberty and justice for all. When the subject citizens are rendered unable to control their financial affairs, they, of course, become totally enslaved, a source of cheap labor. Not only the prices of commodities, but also the availability of labor can be used as the means of shock testing. Labor strikes deliver excellent test shocks to an economy, especially in the critical service areas of trucking, communications, public utilities, etc. By shock testing, it is found that there is a direct relationship between the availability of money flowing in an economy and the real psychological outlook and responses of masses of people dependent upon that availability. So they can control the psychological outlook of masses of people just by observing the shock tests. For example, there is a measurable quantitative relationship between the price of gasoline and the probability that a person would experience a headache, feel a need to watch a violent movie, smoke a cigarette, or go to a tavern for a mug of beer. It is most interesting that by observing and measuring the economic models by which the public tries to run from their problems and escape from reality, and by applying the mathematical theory of operations research, it is possible to program computers to predict the most probable combinations of created events, that is, shocks, which will bring about a complete control and subjugation of the public through a subversion of the public economy. Parentheses, by shaking the plum tree. All right. Too much math here by far for me. You know, I was a math major for my second and third years of college, and then I bailed and went over to government. I liked studying government. I had good teachers. I didn't do so well in math because I think I had bad teachers. They were like eggheads up in their heads all the time and, you know, explaining things, but not really getting into your mind with you and seeing to it that you understood it. That's what I loved about my government teachers. Whoops. Hey, I have a call coming in that I need to. Well, no, I'll postpone it. Sorry about that. Hello, this is John. Who is this? Oh, Mark. Thank you for calling me back. Let me call you back in about 5 minutes. May I? I'm in the middle of something. Yeah, it's on the phone. Yeah, I'll call you back. Bye. So sorry for that. Just a very important call. Um. So anyway, I guess that's a good point for me to wrap it up this morning. I'll go over to the page for a second here. All right, here, yeah, the personal paper trail. This is the list of inputs. General sources of information, telephone taps, analysis of garbage, surveillance, behavior of children in school, standards of living by food, shelter, clothing, transportation, social contacts, telephone, itemized record of calls, family, marriage certificates, birth certificates, etc., friends, associates, etc., membership in organizations, political affiliation, the personal paper trail, checking accounts, credit cards, real estate, business, automobile, safety deposit, stock market, your liabilities, your government interactions, your taxes, your habits, consumption of alcohol, drugs, entertainment. I mean, they are putting down every single aspect of your life. And is that not what all these big computers are for? Okay. Short list of outputs. So this is what comes out of their system. Allocation of opportunities, destroying opportunities, controlling the economic environment, controlling the availability of raw materials, controls capital, controls bank rates, controls the inflation of the currency, controls possession of property. In Ireland, they're talking about eliminating private property. Controls industrial capacity, controls manufacturing, the availability of goods, the prices of commodities, the services, advertising, media contact, surveillance, everything. I'm not going to read them all. To keep the public ignorant, disorganize the public. To maintain access to control points, required reactions. That is, you create a record and they follow your record. All right, you can see where this is going. The next part, diversion to primary strategy. So now that they know who you are, they're going to figure out how to divert you. They're going to get you hooked on something. It's called diversion, and it's also a way of taking away your energy and eliminating you. All right, I'm going to stop reading there and go back to the show and wrap it up. Excuse me for that phone call, but it was one that I really felt I needed to take. And so I'll let it get back to you guys. John, thanks very much, everybody, for being with me. And I'll see you tonight at 8 p.m. with Protecting the Nest.
Thank you very much, John. That was a very good introduction to a lot of the material that many of our subscribers have been asking for several months now. An analysis of the economic implication or the economic strategies that the power elite are using against us in order to maintain their control. And in fact, I venture to say that John just gave away 10% of my first book. But okay, we're getting ready for the George Webb Show, the Research Road Show at the top of the hour. And I'm going to give it to my co-producer, Andy DeBala. Good morning, Andy.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Wilkins. It's great to see a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning, as you always like to say to me when I walk into the studio door. And thank you once again to John OLoughlin for your reading of Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. You can find John's other readings at screamingospreys.com. And his entire video archive is there, along with his book he wrote about his dad's life, the untimely death of Thomas F. OLoughlin Jr. Check it out at screamingospreys.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be turning the page here into George Webb's Research Roadshow coming up next.